So, one of the things that also happened as I'm working with this, is what will happen pretty commonly is the nut popped off, which is good news, because nuts sometimes can be quite difficult to get out of the slot, particularly in a Fender style where there's a slot routed in the neck. So most of the time, Fender nuts aren't actually glued in, they're just held in there by string tension. Alright, so springs off. Now, the next thing that you're going to want to do on an electric or on an acoustic, you're going to mask things off with a little bit of masking tape. And the reason for that is you're going to be producing a lot of filings, and in an electric guitar the filings will get down into the pickup because the pickup's magnetic. And in an acoustic guitar, they'll get down into the sound hole and they'll scratch the finish, and in general, it'll make you really upset. Masking tape.
Well, we've got some Gorilla duct tape if you want to use that.
I'll strap the guitar to my body, maybe.
Not that we pick up and yeah, probably would.
So I have a couple of different kinds of masking tape that I use. This is just regular over-the-counter generic masking tape, but I always take it and do this a couple of times to it. It takes some of the tack out of it, so you don't run the risk of pulling up any finish or anything like that. You just mask off the pickup. They make a specific type of masking tape called Draftsman tape that is really low tack. It's also fairly expensive, so I only use that when I absolutely have to. So, again, the nut popped off, which is good news because I didn't want to use one of my special tools, which is I call a really big hammer to get it out of there.
I've already been persuaded before.
Good deal. I like that. So, next thing that you're going to want to do is to sight down the neck again. And you want to get a neck set as flat as possible before you dress the frets. Because if a neck without strings on it has any curvature or bow in it, you're going to end up filing some frets more deeply than others, and then your action's not going to be even. So looking at it, it looks pretty flat, but my eyes lie to me a lot, which is why I wear glasses and why I have one of these. This is just a piece of triple beam that you can get from StewMac for probably about $75, or you can get off of eBay for about $18. I'll leave it up to you to decide which one I got. It has 3 different scales on it. This one is a Gibson 24 3/4 scale. This one is a Fender bass 34-inch scale, and then this one is a Fender guitar. And this is a Squier, which is licensed by Fender, so it's almost definitely going to be a Fender scale. It's notched so that the frets fit directly like that. And this is so that you can determine if the fretboard itself is level, because you don't care if the frets are level right now. The frets are going to be leveled, so it's got to be about the board, which is why you need a notched edge rather than an unnotched edge. So if anybody wants to come up and have a look at this and see, you'll be able to see pretty easily that the board in the middle has a gap, while the frets on the end do not. You can see daylight through. You see daylight between the notched edge and the fretboard itself. See that? Yeah. It's not much, but it's there. And it's consistent. It's got it on both sides of the fretboard, the bass side as well as the treble side. Occasionally you will see a neck that fits fine on the treble side and not on the bass side, or the other way around, and that means the neck is warped. We won't be covering that tonight. So to try to get this fretboard a little bit more level, we're going to mess with the truss rod. Does everybody have kind of an understanding of how truss rods work? If anybody doesn't, please don't be embarrassed. Otherwise, I'll skip over this part. Okay. Truss rods. There's basically, in almost every guitar, there's a piece of steel rod running down the center of the neck, sitting right in there. Curved in such, in Fenders, it's curved in such a way so that when you tighten the nut on one end, it forces the curve to straighten out, and it puts what's called back bow into the neck, which is where the neck takes and starts to bend like this. And the reason you want to do that is to counteract the tension of the strings, which want to pull it that way. So you string up a guitar, it's going to pull the neck that way. You tighten the truss rod, it bends it back that way, and that allows you to get the strings closer to the frets without having to basically mess with the neck and rebuild it. So the truss rods generally have an adjustment nut up here. It's usually an Allen nut. Sometimes they have Phillips heads or flat heads in there as well. And if you're extremely unlucky, then you'll have some Fender basses have the adjustment nut down here, and you actually have to take the neck off in order to adjust the truss rod. I hate those. Truss rod works just like a normal screw, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. When you tighten the truss rod, it puts back bow in the neck. When you loosen the truss rod, it puts front bow in the neck. Since this neck has too much space, it has a gap in the middle of the fretboard, it needs to have some back bow put on it. So we're going to be tightening the truss rod. This is a 5.5 millimeter Allen wrench. I don't know that off the top of my head. I measured it before y'all got here. And we're just going to do about 1/4 of a turn. If a truss rod spins freely and doesn't do anything, you got a real big problem. Try to do the measurements of the neck relief either with the guitar straight up like this or in playing position, not like this, because just that will put a little bit of back bow in the neck. That's better, but it still needs a little bit more. So we're going to go maybe another 1/8 of a turn here. In some cases where a neck has a whole lot of front bow in it and you have to do a lot with the truss rod, I actually have a rig that I learned from Dan Erlewine. He takes basically a clamp and 2 blocks of wood, puts the blocks of wood here, and then puts a clamp underneath here, and the 2 blocks here form a bridge. And so what it does, the clamp that he puts in the middle forces it down on the ends, forces it into a back bow, and then he adjusts the truss rod. His logic for that is he doesn't want to make the truss rod work any harder than it has to. I'm all on board with that, because as bad as having a truss rod that doesn't work is having a truss rod that doesn't work because of something that you did. Okay, do you all want to come up and have another look at this? Better. It's still got a little bit showing up in this area. And it's even across, and that's close enough for me. Sorry to do it. So, then we're going to start in with the sanding. At home on the bench where I left it because I forgot to put it in the car, I actually have a cradle for the neck that I put here. And when you're doing a fret job, you want to have support under the neck at about the midpoint. You don't want to have it down here because then it's going to put some back bow into the neck and make the fret job uneven. So support in the middle of the neck. And I try not to lay guitars flat on a work table. Fenders, it doesn't make such a big deal, but if you have a Gibson with an angled back headstock, that's a good way to snap the headstock off. It's frowned on in better circles. So the next thing that you're going to do is take a Sharpie and over the top of every fret. All right.
Turn the guitar around. Or be left-handed.
Guys with their scientific techniques.
Lefties figured out how to do it so they don't get the ink all
Yeah,
over.
So what we're doing with this is we're going to be doing what's called a fret dressing. And that is sanding all of the fret tops level with each other so that the action is even all the way up and down the neck.
Oh, by the way, Paul's a veterinarian, which of course means he doesn't eat meat.
What is your side business? Is it guitar repair or the guitar building or both?
Sorry?
What is your side business? Guitar repair or guitar building or both?
I have a business of doing guitar repair to support my habit of building guitars. Currently working on a strategy to bilk the government out of at least $100 by writing off the exorbitant amounts that I spend building guitars as a business expense.
Obama's working on it for you right now.